The letter arrived on a calm morning in Ohio. Colonel Raymond Ellis, a retired U.S. Army veteran, sat on his porch sipping black coffee when the mailman handed him an envelope stamped White House Invitation. His hands, aged and steady from years of service, trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside, the message read, "Dear Colonel Ellis, you are cordially invited to attend the Veterans Appreciation Ceremony in Washington, D.C. President Donald J. Trump." Raymond hadn't been to Washington in decades. Since retiring, he'd chosen a quiet life, volunteering at a local shelter, keeping to himself, and watching sunsets alone. Yet this invitation felt different. He remembered his late wife, Margaret, once saying, "When the time comes to speak again, do it with purpose." He packed his worn military jacket, the one with faded badges, and looked at a photo on the mantel. Him, Margaret, and their son Nathan, all in uniform. Nathan, who never came home from Afghanistan. That evening, he told his neighbor, "I'm going to Washington." "For what?" she asked. "To finally say something I should have said long ago," he replied, eyes filled with pride and pain. The train from Ohio to D.C. felt endless. Every passing mile brought memories. Margaret's laughter, Nathan's first salute, and the folded flag that returned home in his place. Across the aisle sat a young soldier, barely 20. "Sir, were you in the Army?" the boy asked. "Yes," Raymond answered softly. "Heading to the ceremony tomorrow?" "I am." "It's an honor, sir," the young man said, smiling. Raymond's heart tightened. The soldier reminded him so much of Nathan. When the train reached Washington, the city glowed beneath evening lights. Banners for the veterans. Appreciation ceremony lined the streets. In his hotel room, Raymond laid out his jacket and glanced at the prepared speech sitting beside it. But he knew he wouldn't read from that page. This time, he'd speak from the heart. The next morning, the White House lawn gleamed under the sun. Rows of veterans sat proudly, their uniforms crisp and polished. President Donald Trump, in a Navy suit, greeted them one by one. Cameras flashed, but Raymond barely noticed. His thoughts were with the small silver locket in his hand, Nathan's photo inside. An aide approached. "Colonel Ellis, you'll be speaking right after the president." Raymond nodded silently. His heart pounded harder than it had in years. Trump took the podium. "Today," he began, "we honor those who gave everything so America could stand tall. But we also honor the families who carried that sacrifice in silence." Applause broke out. Raymond's eyes stung with tears. "Margaret, this one's for you," he whispered. After the president's speech, Trump stepped down to shake hands with the veterans. When he reached Raymond, he paused. "Colonel Ellis," Trump said warmly, "I've heard your story. You served 35 years?" "Yes, sir." "Your son was in Afghanistan." Raymond nodded. He believed in everything this flag stands for. Trump placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your family's sacrifice will never be forgotten." The sincerity in the president's voice caught Raymond off guard. "When you speak, Colonel," Trump added, "speak from your heart. The nation listens when men like you do." Moments later, Raymond took the stage. The crowd rose in respect as he approached the microphone in his old jacket. "Good afternoon," he began steadily. "I'm Colonel Raymond Ellis, U.S. Army, retired." The applause faded. "I stand here not to speak about medals or wars," he continued, "but about something far greater. What it means to come home." The audience grew still. Even the press lowered their cameras. "I've buried friends. I've lost a son, but I've never lost faith in the country we served." He paused, glancing toward the president. "I want to thank President Trump for reminding this nation that soldiers are more than uniforms. They are fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters who leave pieces of themselves on every battlefield." Applause swelled again, but softer this time, filled with emotion. Raymond then folded the written speech and set it aside. "There's something I've never shared publicly," he said. When my son Nathan died, I wasn't there. I was leading another unit overseas. When I got the news, I cursed everything. This uniform, this flag, even God. I thought silence would protect me from pain, but silence only built walls around my heart. He took a breath, his voice trembling. One day I received a letter from Nathan's best friend, a Marine who survived. He wrote, "Sir, Nathan didn't die scared. His last words were, 'Tell Dad I kept my promise.'" Raymond's eyes glistened. That promise was to protect others. Even in his last breath, he lived by it. The audience wiped their tears. Even Trump sat motionless, visibly moved. "I came here not just to thank my commander-in-chief," Raymond continued, "but to thank this nation for giving my son's sacrifice meaning." He paused. "For years I blamed myself. I thought if I'd chosen family over duty, things would be different. But I've learned that our children learn from what we do, not what we say. To every young soldier here, service isn't just about orders. It's about love. Love for your country, your comrades, and the people you may never meet." The silence deepened. Even the flag seemed to stop moving. "My wife once told me, heroes aren't made on the battlefield, they're made when they choose to forgive themselves." Raymond looked skyward. "Margaret, I'm trying." He took a breath. "I didn't come here for applause. I came to say thank you to every soldier who's ever carried the weight of loss. You're not alone anymore." The crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Veterans saluted. Many wiped away tears. President Trump stood as well, clapping slowly, firmly, respectfully. Cameras captured the powerful image, a president and a soldier, united not by politics, but by shared humanity. Raymond smiled faintly, raising a hand for quiet. "I'm not finished yet," he said. "There's one more thing I need to say, something that's been on my heart for years." He turned his gaze directly toward the president. "Mr. President," Raymond began, his tone steady but filled with emotion, "thank you for all you've done for our veterans. But what we need most isn't just recognition, it's reconnection. America needs to learn to listen to its wounded hearts again." President Trump nodded slowly, visibly moved. Raymond's voice softened. "I'm 76 years old. I don't know how much longer I have left in this world, but before I go, I want to see one thing, this nation holding hands again." A single tear traced down his cheek as the crowd stood still, the air heavy with emotion. When the applause faded, Raymond reached into his jacket pocket and carefully pulled out a small, time-worn letter, its edges yellowed with age. "This," he said quietly, "was Nathan's last letter to me. I've never read it aloud before." His hands trembled as he unfolded it and began to read. "Dear Dad, if you're reading this, I'm probably home in a different way. Don't be sad. You once told me bravery isn't living without fear. It's living despite it. I believed that. I saw children smile when we brought them food, and that's when I understood why you fought all those years. So promise me one thing. Don't stop smiling. The world still needs the heart you gave me. Love, Nathan." By the time Raymond finished, the audience was in tears. Even the Secret Service agents turned away, pretending to check their earpieces. President Trump walked up to him, placed a firm hand on his shoulder, and said softly, "Your son was a hero, Colonel." "And so are you," Raymond whispered. "He was my reason, sir. And now, he's my reminder." The crowd rose again, not in applause but in silent gratitude. Veterans saluted. Civilians pressed their hands to their hearts. Trump looked out over the audience and said, "Today, America heard something more powerful than politics. It heard truth." Turning to Raymond, he added, "May I honor your son with a moment of silence?" Raymond nodded, tears shining in his eyes. The entire lawn went still. Even the birds seemed to pause in the air. For a full minute, nothing existed but the whisper of the flags waving gently in the breeze. When it ended, Trump said quietly, "Colonel Ellis, your son's words will echo far beyond today." Raymond smiled faintly. That's all a father could ever ask for. Looking out at the diverse sea of faces, young and old, soldiers and civilians, he felt something he hadn't in years: unity. And in that stillness, one truth settled deep in his heart. Healing begins the moment you speak the pain you've carried too long. As the ceremony concluded, people didn't rush to leave. One by one, they approached Raymond, veterans, mothers, young cadets, each thanking him with tears in their eyes. A young woman in uniform stepped forward and said softly, "Sir, I lost my father in Iraq. I never got to say goodbye, but today, I feel like I did. Thank you." Raymond placed a trembling hand on her shoulder. "You just did, soldier." President Trump lingered nearby, watching the emotional scene. His aide signaled it was time to leave, but he shook his head and walked toward Raymond once more. "Colonel," he said gently, "that letter reminded us all what's truly sacred." "It reminded me too, sir," Raymond replied. Trump extended his hand. "Would you join me tomorrow at the Veterans Dinner? I think the country still needs to hear from you." Raymond smiled faintly. "Mr. President, I'm not much of a speaker." Trump grinned. "You proved otherwise." Later that night, Raymond sat in his hotel room, clutching Nathan's letter to his chest. The Washington skyline shimmered outside his window, and Margaret's voice echoed in his memory. "When your story helps someone else heal, that's when it becomes worth telling." He turned on the TV. Every channel replayed his speech. The letter, the silence, the tears. Reporters called it the most emotional moment of the year. Raymond didn't smile. He simply looked at the old family photo on his bedside table and whispered, "Nathan, I hope I made you proud." "Margaret, I finally said it." I finally let go. Then his phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Colonel Ellis, I was Nathan's comrade. I saw what happened that day. May I meet you tomorrow?" Raymond's heart raced. Could it really be someone who was there? He typed back slowly, "Yes, noon, hotel lobby." The next morning, the lobby buzzed with reporters and guests. Then through the crowd, a young man in his late 20s appeared, limping slightly, wearing a faded army jacket. "Colonel?" he asked. "Yes," Raymond replied. "I'm Corporal James Porter, sir. I served with Nathan." Raymond's breath caught. "You were there that day?" James nodded. "I was." "I wrote you that letter." Raymond's eyes widened. "You're the Marine who said Nathan kept his promise?" "Yes, sir. Nathan saved my life. He pushed me out of the line of fire." "He took the bullet meant for me." Raymond's voice cracked. "He really said that?" James nodded, his eyes wet. "His last words were, 'Tell my dad I did what he taught me. I couldn't face you all these years.' But after seeing your speech, I knew it was time." Raymond placed a hand over James's trembling one. "Son, you don't need to feel guilty. You just gave me what I was missing: truth." They spent hours in the hotel cafe sharing stories about Nathan, his humor, his courage, his loyalty. James said quietly, "Nathan always talked about you. He said you were his hero." Raymond smiled sadly. "Funny, he was mine." James hesitated, glancing down at his prosthetic leg. "I lost my leg that day, sir. For years I blamed myself. But after hearing your words yesterday, I think Nathan would want me to live fully." "Then do that," Raymond said gently. "Honor him by living." Just then, one of Trump's aides approached. "Colonel Ellis, the president's expecting you in an hour." James stood to leave, but Raymond stopped him. "Come with me." "Nathan wouldn't forgive me if I didn't ask." James froze. "Sir, I can't." "You can," Raymond said firmly, "and you will." That evening, the grand hall shimmered with light as the veterans' dinner began. President Trump stood at the front, greeting guests. When he saw Raymond walk in with James, his expression softened. "Colonel, you brought company," Trump said warmly. "Yes, sir," Raymond replied. "This is Corporal James Porter, my son's brother in arms." Trump shook James's hand. "It's an honor, Corporal." America owes men like you everything. As the evening went on, the president rose to speak. Last night, Colonel Ellis reminded us that behind every fallen hero is a story worth hearing. Tonight, I've asked him to share one more. The spotlight turned to Raymond. He stood, looked at James, then faced the audience. Yesterday, I spoke as a father, he began softly. Tonight, I speak as a soldier. My son gave his life for this man. But what I've come to realize, Raymond said, his voice trembling yet steady, is that Nathan didn't just give his life for his brother in arms. He gave him a second chance. And that, my friends, is the truest form of heroism. The room erupted in applause. James's eyes shimmered with tears while Raymond smiled through his own. Nathan didn't just die a hero, he added softly. He lived as one. After the dinner, President Trump quietly approached the two men. Gentlemen, he said warmly, what you did tonight, reminding this nation of sacrifice and forgiveness, it's powerful. He turned to Raymond. How are you feeling, Colonel? Raymond exhaled, smiling faintly. Lighter, sir. For the first time in years, Trump nodded. America saw something real yesterday. We'll make sure every veteran hears your words. Later that night, Raymond and James walked together near the Lincoln Memorial. The reflection of the monument danced across the still water. James spoke softly. Sir, I wish Nathan could see this. Raymond looked up at the sky. He can, he said. Every time we choose peace over blame, he sees it. James wiped his eyes. You forgave me? Without ever asking why I didn't save him. Because he already did, Raymond replied gently. By saving you, he saved what was left of me. They stood in silence. Two soldiers, one old and one young, connected by loss but freed by love. By morning, the internet was flooded with clips of Raymond's speech and Nathan's letter. Hashtags like "Our Hero's Son," "Our Colonel Ellis," and "Heartwarming Story" trended across the world. Letters and messages poured in, families thanking him, children sending drawings labeled, "Thank you, veterans." Raymond watched from his hotel balcony, humbled. When a news anchor called offering an interview, he politely declined. I didn't do this for fame, he said to James beside him. I did it for healing. But deep down, he knew something greater had begun, conversations that America had long avoided. Estranged families were reconnecting, veterans were seeking help. Communities were holding candlelight vigils for fallen heroes. That afternoon, the call came from the White House. Colonel Ellis, said the aide, the president would like to establish a scholarship fund in Nathan's name for the children of fallen soldiers. Raymond's voice broke. That would mean the world. When he hung up, he whispered, Nathan, your story isn't over. It's just begun. Before leaving Washington, Raymond requested one final stop, Arlington National Cemetery. He and James walked side by side through endless rows of white headstones until they reached Nathan's grave. Raymond knelt, gently brushing his hand over the stone. Hey, son, he whispered. I finally met the man you saved. James dropped to his knees beside him, tears streaming down his cheeks. Thank you, Nathan. You gave me life, and now you've given me purpose. Raymond placed a folded letter beside the grave. That's for you, son. My last one. James hesitated. What did it say, sir? Raymond smiled softly. Just 4 words. I forgive us both. They stood in silence as the wind carried cherry blossom petals across the graves. It felt as though the world itself was saying goodbye with them. Before leaving, Raymond saluted. Rest easy, soldier. Your mission's complete. As they walked away, James said quietly, You know, sir, you've helped me heal more in 2 days than years of therapy. Raymond smiled. Then my duty's done. Weeks later, back in Ohio, Raymond returned to his quiet porch. Piles of letters from strangers filled his table, thank you notes, stories, and drawings from children who called him Grandpa Ray. One morning, he received a package from the White House, a framed medal and a handwritten note. Colonel Ellis, you reminded America what honor truly means. Nathan's courage lives in every heart you've touched. Donald J. Trump. Raymond hung it beside Nathan's photo. He began volunteering again at the Veterans Support Center, but this time not in silence. He shared his story, encouraged others to speak their truth, and reminded them that strength is born when pain is spoken aloud. James called often, sometimes to talk, sometimes just to listen. "You're like the father I never had," he once admitted. Raymond chuckled softly. "Then I guess Nathan sent you my way." And in that shared laughter, the world felt whole again. A year later, the Veterans Appreciation Ceremony was held once more. Raymond, now frailer but glowing with peace, stood on stage with James by his side. "Last year," he began, "I came here broken. Today, I stand here healed." The crowd erupted in cheers. "I've learned that gratitude isn't just saying thank you," he continued. "It's living in a way that honors those we've lost." He looked toward the president and then out over the rows of veterans. "So today I thank my commander-in-chief, but my final thanks go to someone else." He paused, his voice trembling. "To every soldier who never made it home, you did not die in vain. You live in every act of kindness, every child who waves at a veteran, every heart that still believes in this flag." The crowd fell silent. Raymond smiled through tears. "My name is Colonel Raymond Ellis," he said proudly. "My son taught me to fight for love, not war. And that, my friends, is how we keep America strong." He lifted his hand in one final salute. The audience rose to their feet, many openly crying. As the band played taps, a single ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, as if Nathan himself was saluting back.